I turned 92 last Tuesday. My granddaughter baked me a cake, my son called from Seattle, and my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, brought over dumplings like she does every year. It was lovely, really. But that night, sitting alone in my apartment with the leftover cake, I had a thought that shook me to my core. I've been chasing the wrong thing my entire life. Not money, though I chased that too for a while. Not success, though God knows I wanted that. No, what I've been chasing is much more insidious, much more common. And I'm willing to bet most of you watching this are chasing it right now without even realizing it. I'm Margaret. I worked as a high school English teacher for 38 years, raised 3 children on my own after my husband left, and I've lived in the same rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn since 1967. People tell me I had a good life, a meaningful life, and by most measures they're right. But here's what I realized on my 92nd birthday. I spent decades chasing other people's approval, other people's version of who I should be, and in doing so, I missed out on discovering who I actually was. Not completely, mind you. I had moments of authenticity, flashes of the real me, but mostly I performed being the good daughter, the devoted mother, the beloved teacher, the strong woman who had it all together. And the cost of that performance, I'm only now beginning to understand it. You see, last month I found a box in my closet tucked behind winter coats I haven't worn in a decade. Inside were journals I'd kept in my 30s and 40s, notebooks I'd completely forgotten about. I sat on my bedroom floor and I read them, page after page of a woman I barely recognized, a woman who wanted to write novels, who dreamed of living in New Mexico, who felt suffocated by the expectations placed on her, but smiled through it all because that's what good women did. There was one entry, dated March 1979, that made me cry. It said, "I'm so tired of being who everyone needs me to be. Just once, I want to wake up and ask myself what Margaret wants, what Margaret dreams about, what Margaret is afraid of. But I don't have time for Margaret. Margaret is selfish." I closed that journal and I sat there for an hour, mourning the woman who wrote those words, mourning all the years she spent believing that caring for herself was selfish, that her dreams were less important than everyone else's comfort. Here's the thing about chasing approval. It's an unwinnable game. The goalposts move constantly. You think if you just work a little harder, sacrifice a little more, make yourself a little smaller, then finally, you'll feel worthy, you'll feel enough. But it doesn't work that way. I had a colleague at the school where I taught, Patricia. Brilliant woman, taught history, could make the Constitutional Convention sound like the most thrilling drama you'd ever heard. But Patricia lived and died by what the principal thought of her, what the parents thought, what the other teachers whispered in the faculty lounge. She'd stay until 7 at night, grading papers, volunteer for every committee, bring homemade cookies to every meeting, and still one critical parent letter would destroy her for weeks. One slightly cool response from the principal would send her into a spiral of self-doubt. I remember one afternoon, we were having coffee in her classroom, and she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Margaret, I just want them to see how hard I'm trying. I want them to know I'm good enough." I should have said something then. I should have told her that she was already good enough, that she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But I didn't, because I was doing the exact same thing. I was just better at hiding it. Patricia retired at 65, moved to Florida to be near her daughter, and died 2 years later from ovarian cancer. At her funeral, her daughter told me that in those last 2 years, her mother had finally started painting again, something she'd loved in college, but had given up because it seemed frivolous. She said she wished she'd started sooner, her daughter told me. She said she'd wasted so much time worrying about what other people thought. That was 15 years ago, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't learn the lesson then. I nodded sympathetically. I felt sad for Patricia, but I didn't connect it to, oh, my own life. I was still too busy performing, still too invested in being seen as capable, as having it together, as never needing help. You know what finally broke through? It was my grandson, actually. He's 28, works in tech, lives in San Francisco. He came to visit me last year and we were talking about his job, and he said something that stopped me cold. He said, "Grandma, I spent the last 5 years trying to impress people who didn't care about me. I worked 80-hour weeks. I said yes to everything. I pretended I loved the hustle culture when, honestly, I was miserable. And then I got laid off, and you know what happened? Nothing. The people I was trying to impress disappeared. I realized I'd been performing for an audience that wasn't even watching. I looked at this young man, this smart, sensitive person I'd helped raise, and I saw myself. I saw the same trap, the same exhausting treadmill of seeking external validation. And I thought, when does it end? When do we finally give ourselves permission to stop performing and start living? Let me tell you what the cost of all this approval seeking actually is. Because it's not abstract. It's not just some philosophical problem. It steals your life in very concrete ways. First, it steals your energy. Every moment you spend crafting the perfect response, managing how you're perceived, hiding your true feelings, that's energy you're not spending on things that actually matter to you. I spent years, decades, carefully managing my image as the strong single mother who never complained, who always had it together. Do you know how exhausting that was? How much energy I burned pretending I didn't need help, pretending I wasn't lonely, pretending I was fine when I was drowning. Second, it steals your relationships. Real intimacy requires vulnerability. It requires showing people who you actually are, not just the polished version you think they'll approve of. My middle daughter, Rachel, she's 61 now, and we've only recently started having truly honest conversations. For years, our relationship was surface level because I was too busy being the perfect mother to be a real person. She told me last Christmas that she always felt like she was talking to a performance, not a person. That hurt. But she was right. Third, and this is the one that haunts me most, it steals your dreams when you're constantly asking, what will people think? You stop asking, what do I want? You make decisions based on external approval rather than internal truth. You take the safe job instead of the passionate one. You stay in the relationship that looks good on paper. You hide the parts of yourself that don't fit the image you're maintaining. I never wrote my novel. I never moved to New Mexico. I never took that pottery class I was interested in because what would people think? A 50-year-old woman playing with clay? I never dated after my husband left because I was too busy being the strong, independent woman who didn't need anyone. And listen, I'm not saying my life was wasted. I'm not saying I have no joy or meaning or value in what I did. I loved teaching. I love my children. I've had beautiful moments and deep friendships, and I wouldn't trade all of it away. But I do wonder sometimes who I might have been if I'd spent less time worrying about what people thought and more time discovering what I actually wanted. There's a woman in my building, Susan, she's about 70. She started taking salsa dancing lessons 3 years ago. Some of the other residents gossip about it, say it's inappropriate for a woman her age, say she's making a fool of herself. You know what Susan says? She says, I'm having more fun than I've had in 30 years, and I really don't care what anyone thinks about it. I envy that. I envy her freedom, and I'm trying at 92 to learn what she seems to have always known, that other people's opinions of you are none of your business. My son asked me recently if I had any regrets, and I told him the truth. I said my biggest regret isn't what I did. It's what I didn't do because I was afraid of judgment. It's all the times I said no to myself because I was too busy saying yes to everyone else's expectations. He said, Mom, it's not too late. And he's right. It's not too late. I can't get those years back, but I can live differently now. I can finally ask myself what Margaret wants, without immediately dismissing it as selfish or frivolous or too late. So how do we break this pattern? How do we stop chasing approval and start living authentically? Because I'll be honest, even knowing what I know, even at 92 with nothing left to prove, I still catch myself doing it. I still catch myself crafting my words to sound wise, to be likable, to get approval. It's a deep pattern. But here's what I'm learning. First, you have to catch yourself in the act. You have to notice when you're performing instead of being. When you're about to say something, ask yourself, am I saying this because it's true or because it's what I think this person wants to hear? When you're making a decision, ask, is this what I want or is this what I think will make me look good? Just noticing is huge. Just seeing the pattern is the first step to changing it. Second, you have to practice disappointing people. I know that sounds harsh, but it's essential. You have to learn that you can say no, you can have boundaries, you can make choices that other people don't approve of, and you will survive it. More than survive, you'll actually feel more alive. I started small. I stopped automatically saying yes when people asked me to volunteer for things I didn't want to do. I stopped pretending to like foods I don't like just to be polite. Tiny things. But each one was a practice in valuing my own truth over other people's comfort. Third, you need at least one person in your life who you can be completely honest with. Someone who doesn't need you to be anything other than what you are. For me, that's my friend Dorothy. We met in a grief support group 20 years ago, and from the beginning we made a pact. No performing, no pretending, just truth. With Dorothy, I can say I'm scared without following it up with, but I'm handling it. I can admit I'm lonely. I can talk about my regrets without wrapping them in wisdom or positive spin. And the relief of that, the freedom of being fully known by even one person, it's indescribable. Fourth, and this is important, you have to grieve what you lost. You can't just decide to live differently going forward and pretend the past doesn't matter. You have to acknowledge what the approval seeking cost you. You have to feel the sadness of it, the anger maybe, the loss of who you might have been. I've been doing this slowly with those old journals, reading them, crying over them, telling that younger version of myself that her dreams mattered, that she mattered, even if no one else saw it at the time. And finally, you have to start asking yourself the question I avoided for 90 years. What do I actually want? Not what would be impressive, not what would make people think well of me, not what I should want. What do I, in the quiet, honest core of myself, actually want? For me, right now, I want to write. Not to be published, not to be praised, just to write. To put words on paper about what I've seen and felt and learned in 9 decades on this planet. So I'm doing that every morn. I sit with my coffee and I write. And it doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if anyone ever reads it. It's mine. It's true. It's what I want. I also want to know my grandchildren better. Really know them. So I've started asking them different questions. Not, how's work? But what are you afraid of? Not everything going well? But what do you wish was different? And the conversations we're having now, they're real. They're messy sometimes, but they're real. If you're watching this and you're recognizing yourself in what I'm saying, if you're feeling that uncomfortable twinge of, oh God, that's me, I'm constantly performing, I want to tell you something. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not alone. This approval seeking, this performance, it's something most of us learn early. We learn that love is conditional, that acceptance must be earned, and that our worth is determined by other people's opinions of us. And once you learn that lesson, it's incredibly hard to unlearn it. But you can, I promise you. You can. Start today. Start now. Ask yourself one honest question. What's one thing I'm doing purely for approval that I actually don't want to do? And then, if it's safe to do so, stop doing it. not forever necessarily, just for today, just to see what it feels like. Maybe it's the job you hate but keep because it sounds impressive. Maybe it's the relationship you're in because being single seems like failure. Maybe it's the way you dress or talk or spend your time. Maybe it's something small, like always picking up the check to seem generous when you actually can't afford it. Whatever it is, experiment with putting it down, just for a moment. See what happens. I wish I'd done this at 30 or 40 or 50. I wish I'd found those journals earlier and paid attention to what they were telling me. But I didn't, and beating myself up about that doesn't help. What helps is starting now, today, at 92, to live more honestly. There are 3 books I'd recommend if this resonates with you. The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown, When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, and The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. I'll put the links in the description. Read them. They'll challenge you in the best way. This channel is about people like me sharing what we've learned, the hard way usually, in hopes that maybe someone else won't have to learn it quite so hard. If this spoke to you, subscribe and turn on notifications. There's more where this came from. And listen, if you've got a story to tell, something you've learned that might help someone else, there's a form in the description. Fill it out. Maybe we'll share your story next. Leave me a comment telling me one thing you're doing purely for approval. Just name it. Sometimes naming it is the first step to changing it. Hit that like button if this resonated. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. I'm 92 years old, and I am finally learning to live for my own approval instead of everyone else's. It's not too late for me, and it's sure as hell not too late for you. Thank you for listening. Really, your attention means more than you know.